deal with the teaching properly, what should be the main objective of studying the Dhamma, right? How we should make use of the teaching as a raft and so on. So all these things are discussed in the Alagatthupama Sutta, and the Sevitabha Sutta is talking about basically how our verbal, physical and mental actions should be, right? So, and the discussion focused on 5 precepts as well. So if you are observing the 5 precepts, it is a good way of life. If you are breaking the precepts, that is not really a good way of life, right? So that was the main subject matter of discussion. So as I mentioned in the last class, we'll be focusing on some important teachings today, but we are not going to, go through different teachings even in the subsequent lectures as well, because our primary focus is on the history of Buddhism in India. So we will be focusing on how different historical incidents took place and how the teachings have been transmitted, how different schools were formed, right? So, and what are the masters or kings or Buddhist scholars that have contributed to, to the preservation and propagation of Buddhism and so on. So those would be our primary concern. So as a continuation of the last lecture, we will be focusing on this central teaching of the Buddha, that is causality. You can also say conditionality. So I put this picture for you to have an understanding of Buddhist theory of causality. This is how everything is connected, as it shows, so this interdependency and interconnections is shown in this spider web. So this is the theory, basically, theory of causality. Where can I put it? This side. This, you would find that as soon as the Buddha attained enlightenment, he uttered several verses. If you have gone through this document from Vinaya Pitaka, you would find that after attaining enlightenment, the Buddha spent 49 days, that is 7 weeks, right? 7 weeks around the Bodhi tree, under the Bodhi tree and around the Bodhi tree in different places, reflecting on the teachings, reflecting on his experience of enlightenment, okay, different aspect of it. He was reviewing his knowledge and experience, okay, before he took an initiative to share his enlightenment experience with others, okay. So he was reviewing his knowledge, and Paticca Samuppada, or the theory of causality, is one of those, okay. And we find in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, as well as in the Anatta Lakkana Sutta, the essence of his teaching. And we find how he wanted to present his understanding of truth, his teaching systematically. Okay. So this is the verse. It is very important to keep in mind. Iti imasming sati idang hoti imasuppada idang upajjati imasming asati idang nahoti imasa nirodha idang nirujjati. So what it means is that iti imasming sati idang hoti. It means when this is, that is. Okay. Iti imasming sati idang hoti. There is this when this is present. Imasupada idang upajjati. With the arising of this arises, or that arises, you can say. Imasming asati idang nahoti. When this is not present, when this is not there, that does not, that is also not present. That is also not there. Imassa nirodha idang nirujjati. With the cessation of this, that ceases. Okay. So this is the fundamental theory that is presented. You can find it in the, it's called, I think, Udana Sutta, probably. The first 3 suttas of the Udana text belonging to Kuddaka Nikaya, you would find the expression together with the 12 links of Paticca Samuppada. Now, a number of important teachings in Buddhism are taught, you know, around this theory. Okay, so this is the main theory that is that functions as a guiding principle in a lot of Buddha's teaching. If you look at the Four Noble Truths, you'd find there is dukkha. Why there is dukkha? Because there is cause for the arising of dukkha, right? So when there is cause, there is suffering. When there is cause of suffering, there is suffering. With the cessation of cause, there is the cessation of suffering, right? And the cause is tanha. Because of tanha, there is dukkha. And to remove this tanha, you follow a particular practice, magga. And when there is no dukkha, you know, when you remove the tanha, then you experience nibbana, that is free from dukkha.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
The first question is about tanha. It means the reason of dukkha or the original of dukkha.
Tanha is described as the cause for the arising of dukkha.
Yeah, but when I read a text about dukkha that said dukkha because samsara, so the reason of dukkha is ignorance.
Yeah. So there is no actually,
so
you know, first cause.
Connection, yeah.
Yes, of course. Ignorance is present there as well. There is, you know, in Buddhism, you do not find a first cause leading to everything, you know. So it is a kind of a vicious circle. So you would find that sometimes tanha is given the priority, sometimes ignorance is given the priority as an important cause contributing to the, you know, arising of suffering and so on. But they are more or less, all of these negative, you know, qualities are actually intermingled with each other. When there is ignorance, there is tanha. When there is tanha, there is ignorance, is something like that. You know, when there is knowledge, there should not be tanha, you see. When there is wisdom, there should not be tanha, you see. And then, for example, what about self-idea? Sakkaya ditti, believing in the existence of self, right? So when you do not have this idea of self, when you do not have this attachment, then no point talking about ignorance and tanha, you see. Sakkaya ditti. In fact, Sakkaya ditti is one of the factor in the spiritual practice that says that it takes longer time for one to be free from. It is so deeply rooted in the psychology of beings. Even if you become the first, obtainer of this first stage of Arya, what do you call, Magga and Phala, Sotapanna, you still have the idea of self. You are not still completely free from the idea of self. You become an Sakadagami, probably the idea of self is weakened, but it is still there. It is only when you become an Arahant, you uproot it completely.
And so Arahant is completely free from the dukkha, even about the Sankhara dukkha.
Yes, you can say that an Arahant, by becoming an Arahant, one becomes completely free from the experience of suffering. But as long as you are having these aggregates, 5 aggregates, this kaya, this body, you would have to experience the physical suffering and so on. You see, if you are becoming old or if you are being afflicted by sickness, but your mind is not afflicted by this pain, you see, because you are in a position where you can remain detached from all these experiences, worldly experiences.
Yeah. And could you please to see again the name of that sutta about the iti imasmin sati itam hoti?
Yeah, as I said, I think you are familiar with the canonical text, right? So there is a Nikaya called Kuddaka Nikaya belonging to Sutta Pitaka. In the Kuddaka Nikaya, there are about 15 texts. One of the texts is Udana. You just look at the first 3 suttas. You have this formula mentioned there. Also, I'm guessing that it is in the section of the Vinaya Pitaka that I sent to you. It should be there as well because it is connected to Buddha's reviewing of knowledge after his attainment of enlightenment.
Yeah, thank you, teacher. But sometimes I can't find the Vinaya in Chinese, maybe because of the internet. And so I will try again. If I can't, I will send an email to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Translation. We'll come to that. Yeah. So in this picture also you can see if A causes B, then origination of A will cause origination of B. Cessation of A will cause cessation of B. So that is what it means. Okay. So if cause and effect are taken as A and B, it should not be understood as from A arises B. Rather, it should be understood as when A is present, B comes to be. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, it is.
Grace seems to be confused.
It's at the same time.
It says, if you take cause and effect as A and B, when it says, iti masming sati, idang hoti, and imas mean asati idang nahoti means that when A is present, B comes to be. It does not mean when from A arises B. We'll be
Yes,
more
yes,
clear about
clear.
it, later on. Because when you say from A arises B, it seems to mean that B is present in A. You see, but when you say when A is present, B comes to B, it means that when a certain conditions are there, certain other things come to be. Okay, it is neither exactly the same nor exactly different. There is a certain connection or relation. Okay, unlike in the Sankhya philosophy, an evolutionary change is denied in Buddhism. Okay, in Sankhya thought, the effect remains in the cause in a latent and manifest form and becomes actualized as the result of an evolutionary process called parinama. Okay, so in the Sankhya philosophy, it's one of the school in Indian philosophical system. It says that the effect is already in the cause. It is in the latent and unmanifest form. Through the process of change, through the parinama, the effect is visible, okay? But it is latent in the cause. So that is the primary theory of Sankhya philosophy. But Buddhism does not uphold similar teaching. In Buddhism, the term used is not parinama, but viparinama, to refer to change, okay? If you remember, we came to know about 3 types of suffering. One of them is viparinama dukkha, suffering due to change, right? Suffering due to change. That take place in the conditioned world and that contributes to suffering. Viparinama suggests that the change is without an unchanging substance. Okay, Viparinama suggests that the change is without an unchanging substance. If there is an unchanging substance, if there is something that, by logic should not change, then the change is not possible. That means if somebody is born as a bad person, he has no way to become a good person because essentially he is bad, right? There's no possibility. So Buddhist principle of causality denies following positions. The cause does not have the effect in its womb. The cause is not in the effect. The effect is empty of the cause. The effect is neither the same nor different from the cause. So among many similes to explain this is one of the simile, how milk changed to curds, then to butter, then fresh butter, right? Different forms of butter. So this is an example attached to the idea of cause-effect relationship. You have milk, milk from the cow, and when the milk changed to curd, you cannot, consider the milk anymore. Okay, but if there was not, if there was no milk, you cannot have curd, right? So it is neither the same nor different, right? So then fresh butter proceeds from curds. So you have finally this fresh butter which comes from curd, and this fresh butter are neither, you know, similar to curds, not different from the curds in the sense that they came from curds. Clarified butter proceeds from fresh butter, and cream of clarified butter proceeds from clarified butter. At the time when it is milk, it cannot be called fresh butter, etc. But it is called at that time just milk. At the time when it is curds, it cannot be called milk, it cannot be called fresh butter, etc. Understood? Any confusion? I think it is very well explained. We do not have to think of so many other things, just follow the logic and you see, you just need to understand the theory basically. And with this understanding, you can look at any text describing about the Paticca Samuppada. You can have better understanding of the topic. So we are just trying to be familiar with the theory. We did not get the meaning yet, right? Meaning of that phrase, that Pali. You wanted to write it down? Did you write down? Okay, we'll come to that later. Okay. Okay, so with this understanding about the Buddhist principle of causality, let's look at this passage now, the characteristic of the doctrine of causality. So this is how the theory of causality is described in the text. Adigato ko mayang nyayang me ayang. This is me ayang. Adigato ko me ayang dhammo gambiro dudaso duranubhodo santo panito atakkavacharo nipuno pandita vedaninyo yadidang idapachayata paticca samupado sabba sankara samato sabbopade patinissaggo tanhakkayo virago nirodo nibbana. The Dhamma that has been understood by me. What does it refer to? By me means the Buddha. The Buddha is explaining that the Dhamma, the truth that I have realized, that I have understood, is profound, is difficult to see and understand. It is peaceful. It is sublime. It is beyond logic, skillful, experienced by the wise. That is dependent origination in terms of causation. It is appeasement of all formations. Sabba sankara samato. Appeasement of all formations. Forsaking of all attachments. Sabbo upadi patinisaggo. Forsaking of all attachments. Freed from craving and lust. tanhakkayo, virago, cessation and nibbana, nirodho, nibbana. So these are in a way, all these expressions represent the same thing. So what is actually dependent origination, or the understanding of dependent origination is actually appeasement of all formations, is equal to forsaking of all attachment, is equal to being free from craving and lust, is cessation, and is nibbana. Okay, so what you notice here is that the Buddha, after his attainment of enlightenment and after understanding this theory of paticca samuppada in terms of idapachayata, causation, is saying that Buddha himself is saying that this is not an easy topic to understand. Okay, so, and finally he says that it is experienced by the wise. So that means to understand it, we have to try to be wise, right? We have to make an effort to be wise because it is difficult. And if you want to understand it immediately, it is not going to happen unless you are an extraordinary being. You have been perfecting paramitas, for example, throughout your lifetimes, different lifetimes. Okay. But we do not have to be sad by, knowing that it is very difficult to understand. I think we are fortunate that we are coming in contact with this kind of teaching and we are having an occasion to discuss about it. In a way, we are creating, or generating a kind of a seed of understanding this profound teaching. Okay. So this will function as a cause for us to have a better understanding of the teaching. Okay. So the difficulty is explained by the Buddha himself, and the characteristics, so these are the characteristics, and this dependent origination in terms of causation is explained with some other expressions like appeasement of all formations and so on. Okay, so now look at this conversation between the Buddha and Ananda with regard to the understanding of dependent origination, or sometimes as it is translated as dependent co-arising. So you all know Ananda, right? You all know that Ananda was the chief attendant of the Buddha for many, many years. And he has been serving the Buddha. So he was very close to the Buddha all the time. And he's also a very important figure because he was the one who recited all the Dhamma in the first Buddhist council. And that is how we come to know about the teaching of the Buddha, because he remembered them and then he recited them in the first Buddhist council, right? So now he says that at one point in time, he's saying that, it is amazing, Lord, it is astounding how deep this dependent co-arising is and how deep its appearance. And yet to me, it seems as clear as it can be. As clear as it can be. Okay, so there is a typing error, I think. So basically, what he's saying is that this dependent origination is so complex, so deep and difficult to understand, but it appeared to be very clear to me. Then the Buddha told him that don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Deep Is this dependent co-arising and deep its appearance? It is because of not understanding and not penetrating this Dhamma that this generation is like a tangled skein, a knotted ball of string, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not go beyond transmigration, beyond the plains of deprivation, woe, and bad destinations. So Buddha understood that the way Ananda was understanding the teaching of dependent origination is not correct. Okay. So Buddha is warning him, saying that don't say that, it is, even though it is difficult, it is very clear to me. Probably Buddha understood that Ananda did not really comprehend fully the teaching of dependent origination. So Buddha is saying that it is because of not understanding or not penetrating this Dhamma that people, common worldling, is stuck in the samsara, cannot go beyond samsaric journey. Okay, stuck in the bad destinations in the world. And this conversation is significant. Why? Because it has taken place between the Buddha and Ananda, right? Ananda is the one who has been serving the Buddha for a longest period of time. Even then, when Ananda said that it is clear to me, Buddha said that, no, even though you are thinking that it is clear to you, it is actually, no, you still have to work on it. Okay. This is to show how sincerely we need to approach to this particular teaching. Okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the scope of Buddhist dependent origination. Does it apply to whole of animate and inanimate existence? It's a question. So if you take it as a theory, when this is, that comes to be with the arising of this, that arises, when this is not, that is not, with the cessation of this, that ceases, the theory applies to everything. Okay, animate or inanimate, everything. So the Buddha says that it should be understood in relation to world and in relation to Sabbha. So we need to understand how the Buddha defined a world and Sabbha. So loka is explained in this particular way. Loko loko tibhante bucchati. Kittavata nuko bante loko va asa loko panyati vati. Yattako samindhi atti chakku atti rupa atti chakku vinyanang. Atti chakku vinyana vinyatabba dhamma. Atti tattha lokova loka panyativa. This represents an exposition of loka. So it says that Samidhi is the one. Samidhi is asking, Venerable Sir, loka is said, the world is said, but in what respect, Venerable, should I understand the world or the concept of a world? That was the question. The answer was, it should be understood in relation to chakku, eyes, rupa, form. So chakku represent indriya, right? So you have chakku indriya, sota indriya, ghana indriya, Indriyas. Aggregates are different. They are Khanda. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara. Those are Khanda. Indriya. Yeah. Faculties. Faculties, yeah. And the objects, sense objects. Rupa, Sabda, right? Form, sound, then taste, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and mental objects as well. Chakku Vinyanang, the consciousness that arises due to the contact between Indriya and object. Chakku Vinyana Veditabba Dhamma, the thoughts that you form based on the contact. You have Vijnana, and based on the Vijnana, you have particular thought formations. Atti tatta lokova lokopanyativa. A world should be understood in this regard. Okay, so it is basically, referring to how an individual experiences everything using his sense, different senses, and the kind of perceptions he makes. This world the Buddha is referring to.